Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive.
Yes.
And today we're diving into a book that's been generating a lot of buzz online.
Yeah.
Especially within certain communities, like the Married Red Pill subreddit.
Right.
It tackles the history of gender roles and leadership and explores some pretty controversial claims about the impact of feminism on modern society.
I think the author...
There might find some of these arguments challenging, maybe even a bit unsettling. But that's the point of a deep dive, right?
Exactly.
To get beyond the surface and really grapple with some complex ideas.
Yeah, and while we're going to unpack some specific historical examples and societal trends, this deep dive ultimately raises some fundamental questions about the nature of power, the roles of men and women, and how we define success and fulfillment in today's world.
Absolutely. So buckle up, because we're about to explore some bold claims about female leadership, the wage gap myth, and the impact of progressive ideologies on traditional family structure.
I think one of the things that really stood out to me when I was reading this book was this idea that gender equality is not just a flawed idea, but it's actually a harmful myth.
It's definitely making people rethink some long-held assumptions. So for our listeners today, we're going to unpack some of the book's most thought-provoking arguments, especially those that resonate with the red pill philosophy. We'll explore historical examples of female leaders. Dive into the wage gap debate and examine how those connect with the idea of covert contracts in relationships.
I think it's important to note as we get into this that we're not necessarily endorsing the author's argument. We want to present like a balanced view so that you can make your own informed decision about this.
Exactly. So let's jump right in.
Okay.
The author kicks things off by diving into historical examples of female leaders. They bring up figures like Queen Boudica, who led a rebellion against the Romans, and Queen Seondeok of Silla in Korea, who ruled during a time of significant change and upheaval.
And they're using these examples, along with some more modern ones like Elizabeth Holmes and Marissa Mayer, to argue that female leadership can have disastrous consequences. You know, they're suggesting there's a pattern there of instability or poor decision.
It definitely challenges the narrative that we often hear about women being just as capable leaders as men now. Some of you listening might be thinking, well, those are just a few examples. And they're from different time periods.
Different contexts, for sure.
But the author doesn't stop there. They also bring up some pretty controversial claims about biology and leadership.
So they go into the role of testosterone and evolutionary psychology, arguing that men are biologically predisposed to lead because of higher testosterone levels and their historical roles as hunters and protectors.
So they're basically saying that trying to push women into leadership roles goes against their natural inclinations and might actually be harmful to society.
That's essentially their argument.
And of course, there's a lot of debate around this topic.
Yeah, a lot of pushback on this.
So we want to encourage you to think critically about these arguments and to consider how they might relate to your own experience.
Like in your own life, have you seen anything that aligns with that or contradicts that?
Exactly. Now let's move on to another controversial topic that the author tackles, the wage gap.
Yes, the wage gap.
You've probably heard this statistic that women earn less than men for doing the same work.
Oh, I've heard that so many times.
But the author calls this a complete myth.
Yeah, they break down that statistic. It doesn't take into account things like career choices, hours, worked time taken off for family.
They argue that when you compare men and women with the same job experience and hours, the gap practically disappears.
Almost entirely.
They even claim that women in their 20s are now actually earning more than men.
Yeah, that's an interesting
in that age group. Now, this is a really interesting point, especially for our listeners who are part of the Married Red Pill community. Think about the financial dynamics in your own marriage. Do you see a disparity that feels unfair? Or does the author's explanation resonate with your own experience?
Yeah, because they're suggesting that this whole idea of the wage gap is more about pushing a feminist agenda than it is about reality.
They're saying it's a way to create resentment towards men and justify policies that actually disadvantage men.
Interesting.
It's all about understanding the underlying power dynamics at play.
And that leads into another concept they talk about, the feminization of institutions.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
Well, they're saying that feminism has increasingly influenced our institutions, from the legal system to education to the workplace. And this influence
has led to a shift in power dynamics that often puts men at a disadvantage. Now, that definitely ties in with what a lot of guys in the Married Red Pill community are talking about.
Right.
Especially when it comes to feeling like they're on the losing end of divorce settlements or child custody battles.
Yeah, and the author is saying
Yeah.
that these issues stem from this feminization of our institution. Like, these systems were originally designed to protect and uphold a certain social order.
Yeah.
And now they're being used to undermine men and traditional masculinity.
And that's where the whole red pill philosophy comes into play.
Yeah, they see it as a way
Yeah.
for men to wake up to these perceived injustices and challenge the dominant narrative that they see is biased against them.
So it's about questioning the assumptions that we've been taught about gender roles,
Yes.
relationships, and power dynamics. And that leads us to the concept of covert contracts within marriage, which is central to the red pill philosophy. This is where things get really interesting, especially for our married listener. The author argues that many men are unwittingly entering into agreements where they're expected to provide and protect, but aren't receiving the love, respect, and loyalty they deserve in return.
So, like a bad deal?
They call it the marriage plantation, suggesting that men are working within a system that ultimately benefits women at their expense.
Okay.
It's a provocative metaphor, and one that challenges men to examine the unspoken agreements within their own marriages.
So are they saying that men are being tricked or manipulated?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
They're suggesting that these contracts are often implicit, based on societal expectations and traditional gender roles that men haven't fully examined or challenged.
I see.
Okay, so what does this all mean for our listeners who are trying to understand and potentially amend their own covert contract?
Well, the author doesn't offer
Yeah.
like specific solutions, but he encourages men to become aware of these dynamics and to start asking tough questions about the terms of their relationship.
Like, what are we really getting out of this?
Yeah, what are my needs?
Yeah.
What are my expectations? And am I getting those met?
It's about understanding your own needs and expectations and being willing to negotiate a more equitable partnership.
That's good.
That's a great point. It's about empowering yourself to create a relationship that works for both partners.
I like that.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground so far.
Yeah.
And there's still much more to explore in this book.
Yeah.
We've touched on historical examples of female leadership, delved into the wage gap debate, and explored the concepts of the red pill philosophy and covert contracts in marriage.
And all of these topics kind of intertwine with this central argument that feminism has impacted society, not always for the better, and that men need to understand these shifts to navigate the modern world successfully.
And remember, this is just the beginning of our deep dive into this thought-provoking book. We've only just scratched the surface.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore the author's claims about the education system,
Yeah.
the legal system, and the impact of these societal shifts
Right.
on traditional family structure. Welcome back to the deep dive. As promised, we're picking up our exploration of this book, which has sparked a lot of conversation, particularly within the married red pill community.
Absolutely. And we're going to unpack some pretty thought-provoking claims about how our institutions have changed over time and whether those changes have actually benefited men.
Right.
We're talking education, the legal system, and the impact these shifts have had on the traditional family structure.
And as we kind of delve into these topics, keep in mind the author's perspective here.
Right.
They're arguing that a lot of these institutions that were designed to maintain a certain societal order have been significantly influenced by progressive ideologies, which they see as often detrimental to men's interests.
Okay, so let's start with education. The author argues that the education system, especially in Western societies, has become increasingly feminized.
They point to the decline in the number of male teachers, especially in elementary and secondary education, and suggest that this lack of male role models might be contributing to boys falling behind academically.
I've heard that from a lot of guys in the married red pill community too.
Yeah.
They feel like the education system just isn't set up to help boys succeed.
Right. And they also talk about how the teaching methods often cater to girls' learning styles and kind of neglect the unique ways that boys learn and engage with information.
That's really interesting because they connect this to the rise in behavioral problems among boys.
Oh, yeah.
They're saying that if boys aren't engaged and challenged in school, they're more likely to act out or disengage entirely.
It's a systemic issue, not just individual boys not trying hard enough.
It's the system itself.
Exactly.
What's the solution? Do they suggest bringing back More traditional teaching methods?
Well,
or specifically trying to recruit more male teachers?
I mean, they definitely advocate for a reevaluation of how we educate boys.
Right.
They suggest that maybe a more masculine approach,
Right.
one that emphasizes competition, risk-taking, hands-on learning, might be more effective.
That makes sense, especially when you consider that boys are often drawn to more active and hands-on learning experiences.
Exactly. Now, moving on to the legal system.
Okay.
The author focuses primarily on family courts and the way they handle divorce and child custody.
This is a topic that really hits home.
Yes.
For a lot of guys in the married red pill community,
Yeah.
they often feel like the system is rigged against them, that they're automatically labeled the bad guy in divorce proceedings.
The author echoes that sentiment. They're saying that family courts are often biased against men, awarding custody to mothers in a vast majority of cases, even when the father is a capable and loving parent.
And they tie this back to that idea of feminization, right?
Exactly.
They're saying that the legal system has been influenced by feminist ideology to the point where it's actually discriminating against men.
That's their core argument.
So what does this mean for men who are going through divorce or custody battles?
Right.
What advice does the author offer?
Well, they don't offer specific legal advice, but they do encourage men to be proactive, to educate themselves about their rights, and to fight for their children.
So don't just be a passive victim.
Right.
Stand up for yourself.
Yeah, know your rights.
And your rights as a father.
Exactly. Now let's move on to another topic
Okay.
that's closely related to the family court.
Okay.
The author's claims about the destruction of the traditional family structure. They're arguing that feminism has played a significant role in this breakdown. They point to rising divorce rates, the increase in single mother households, and what they see as the negative consequences of fatherlessness.
And for our listeners in the married red pill community, this might be a point of particular concern. The author seems to be aligning with the idea that the traditional family structure, with a father as the provider and protector and a mother as the nurturer and caregiver, is under attack. And this attack is detrimental to society as a whole.
That's right. They see that traditional family structure as a bedrock of society, providing stability, morality, a strong foundation for children to thrive.
So are they saying that women going to work and pursuing careers outside the home is the primary cause of this breakdown?
They definitely see a connection between the rise of feminism, which encourages women to seek fulfillment outside of traditional roles, and the decline of the traditional family structure.
So it's like they're saying that there's an imbalance now, and it's leaving men feeling lost, without a purpose, and children without the guidance and support of both parents.
Oh, that's a pretty loaded argument.
It is.
It seems like they're placing the blame squarely on feminism for these societal changes.
Yeah, but it's interesting to consider how these shifts might be contributing to the frustrations that many men are feeling today.
Absolutely. It's all about understanding the context of these arguments and how they relate to the experiences of men who are struggling to adapt to a changing social landscape.
They're looking for answers. And this author offers a framework for understanding these shifts through a particular lens.
They're basically saying, hey, this is what's happening and here's why it's happening. Whether you agree with it or not, at least
it's food for thought.
Something to think about.
And now before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on something the author calls the red pill concept of the marriage plantation.
Yes, this is a particularly provocative metaphor.
Can you explain that a bit further? For our listeners who might not be familiar with this concept.
Essentially, they're suggesting that men are often trapped in a system within marriage where they are expected to be the providers and protectors, working tirelessly to maintain a certain standard of living, while their wives reap the benefits without necessarily contributing equally.
So they're working long hours, sacrificing their own needs and desires to ensure their family's comfort and security, while the wife focuses on her own pursuits, whether it's career personal development or simply enjoying a more leisurely lifestyle.
And they tie this back to the idea of covert contracts that we talked about earlier, these unspoken agreements, often rooted in traditional gender roles, can leave men feeling used and unappreciated.
Like they're toiling away on a plantation for someone else's benefit.
Yeah, it's a strong image.
It is.
But it's designed to make men question the underlying power dynamics within their marriages.
and whether they're truly getting a fair deal.
Exactly. And it's certainly a concept that's worth exploring,
Yeah.
especially for men who are feeling resentful or unfulfilled in their marriages.
Right. It might prompt them to have some honest conversations with their partners.
Yeah.
About their needs, their expectations, and how they can create a more balanced and equitable relationship.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive.
Wow.
We've explored some pretty controversial topics.
We have.
From the feminization of education and the legal system to the alleged destruction of the traditional family structure and the marriage plantation metaphor.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is a lot to unpack. In part 3, we'll wrap up our exploration by examining the author's claims about the medical system and their views on the red pill philosophy in more detail.
Sounds good. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of this book that's been generating a lot of buzz, especially among those familiar with the red pill philosophy.
Yeah, we've covered some dense territory already.
We have.
Education, the legal system, the family structure. Now we're diving into the author's take on the medical system and how it relates to men's health and well-being.
And for our listeners who are part of the married red pill community, this section might be particularly relevant.
Yeah.
We're talking about how societal shifts and perceived feminist influence might be impacting men's access to health care and the way their health concerns are addressed.
The author argues that men's health issues often get sidelined, while research and resources are disproportionately directed toward women's health.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I've heard this sentiment echoed online, particularly regarding things like prostate cancer research compared to the funding and awareness campaigns for breast cancer.
Exactly.
You see that everywhere.
The author highlights that discrepancy and suggests it reflects a broader trend of neglecting men's unique health needs.
They even argued that the medical system itself has become feminized, with a focus on empathy and emotional support that might not always align with how men typically approach healthcare.
Right. They're saying that this approach can sometimes lead to men's concerns being dismissed or not taken as seriously.
It's like they're saying that the medical system, while striving for inclusivity, might be inadvertently perpetuating certain gender stereotypes that ultimately harm both men and women. And this all ties back into the author's larger argument about men needing to be more proactive about their health and well-being.
Absolutely. They encourage men to advocate for themselves, to research their health concerns, and not hesitate to seek second opinions if they feel their concerns are not being addressed adequately.
Don't just sit back.
Take control.
Exactly. Now let's move on to the final piece of our deep dive.
Okay.
A closer look at the red pill philosophy. We've touched on it throughout our discussion. But the author dedicates a significant portion of the book to explaining its core principle and impact on men's lives. And for our listeners who are already familiar with the red pill, this section provides a deeper understanding of its historical context, its evolution, and how it's shaping the way men view relationships, masculinity, and their place in the world.
The author presents the red pill as a movement born out of men's frustration with what they perceive as unfair treatment by society and within their relationship. And they argue that it offers a framework for understanding these perceived injustices and empowers men to take control of their lives.
One of the key concepts within the red pill philosophy that the author highlights is hypergamy.
Yeah, this is the idea that women are biologically wired to be attracted to men who are higher status, possess greater resources, and demonstrate strength and ambition.
So they're basically saying that women are naturally drawn to successful and powerful men.
That's the basic premise. Now, whether you agree with this concept or not, the author argues that understanding hypergamy is crucial for men to navigate the dating and relationship landscape successfully. They also talk about the importance of game, which is essentially the art of attraction and seduction. They argue that men need to develop their game to stand out and appeal to women in a world where women have more options than ever before.
They need to step up their game.
Right.
They can't just be the nice guy and hope for the best.
Exactly.
So it's about becoming the best version of yourself.
That's a key element. The author also emphasizes the importance of self-reliance and personal responsibility within the red pill philosophy.
So men need to stop blaming others for their problems.
Yeah, it's about men taking ownership of their lives, their choices and their outcomes, rather than blaming external factors or feeling victimized by societal forces.
It's all about taking control.
Right. They encourage men to focus on what they can control, their physical fitness, their mental health, their financial well-being, their skills and talents,
instead of focusing on what they can't.
And they argue that this focus on self-improvement not only benefits men individually, but also makes them more attractive partners and contributes to a stronger and more stable society.
Makes sense. So it's about personal growth, self-reliance, and understanding the dynamics of attraction and relationship.
Those are some of the core principles.
Yeah.
Now, it's important to acknowledge that the red pill philosophy is not without its critics.
Right.
Some argue that it promotes a negative and even misogynistic view of women.
That's a valid concern.
It is.
And we always encourage our listeners to think critically about these things.
Absolutely. But even if you don't agree with every aspect of the red pill, the author argues that it offers valuable insights that can help men navigate the complexities of modern life and relationships.
So there's a lot to learn.
There is.
Even if you don't agree with everything.
Yeah.
They encourage readers to explore these ideas, to challenge their own assumptions, and to ultimately create a life that is fulfilling and meaningful on their own terms.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into this thought-provoking book.
Wow, what a journey.
It has been a journey.
We've explored a wide range of topics, from the history of gender roles to the impact of feminism on society to the core principles of the red pill philosophy.
We really went deep.
We did. It's been a journey filled with controversial claims, challenging perspectives, and perhaps even some uncomfortable truths.
But it's all about understanding.
It is.
The growth.
And if you're interested in exploring these ideas further, the book is available on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Book.
Definitely worth checking out.
And that, my friends, is what the deep dive is all about.
Yes.
Until next time.